This is the second part of lesson 2.3. So last time we found coordinates of midpoints. We talked about the term bisect, and we talked about the term congruent. So in this video, we're going to look at these examples. True or false? Are these segments congruent? Here's your number line. Lots of points on this number line. The coordinates aren't necessarily filled in. You can take some time and do that. It's always good to know the scale on your number line before you really jump into any problems. So notice how we are counting by ones on our number line. And that helps because maybe you want to count the distance from B to F. How far is it from B to F? One, 2, 3, 4 units. You could have also subtracted -5 minus -1, and you take the absolute value, that'll give you 4. Now, if we're wondering if these are congruent segments, you need to know how long they are. So that's why we found the distance from B to F. We need to do the same thing for segment HL. How far is it from point H to point L? It's 4. You can count or you can subtract 5 minus 1. If they have equal lengths, are they congruent segments? That's true. So notice how we're showing our work. We're finding our lengths, not just writing true or false. In the second one, we're looking at segment AD. It goes from -6 to -3. That has a length of 3. You need to compare that with segment EG. How long is segment EG? It goes from -2 to 0. So it has a length of 2. These segments are not the same length. So they're not congruent. I'll just put an F there for false. Is segment IL congruent to segment JN? Segment IL has a length of 3. Segment JN has a length of 4. Those segments are not congruent because their lengths are not equal. Is segment AE congruent to segment GL? Segment AE has a length of 4. -6 to -2. Compare that with segment GL. Segment GL has a length of 5. They're not equal, so they're not congruent. So this is what your congruent symbol looks like. If you want to say that they're not congruent, like these 3 are, you could put a slash through the congruent sign. It means they're not congruent. So you'll see that from time to time. Next one, segment OP. Is it congruent to segment OP? Well, if you look up here, I don't even see point O or point P, so how are you going to determine their lengths? You can't. But this segment is the same as this segment. It's the same exact segment, and it's named exactly the same way. So regardless of how long it is, wouldn't it be congruent to itself? We talked about this a little before. This is your reflexive property when you compare one thing with itself. Okay, so that reflexive property says anything is the same length as itself. And we have a slide that I'll show next on those properties. Okay, same concept now. What if segment QR is congruent to segment ST? We don't see them. We don't know their lengths. But if they're congruent, could you say they're congruent if you wrote them the other way? Would segment ST be congruent to segment QR? Definitely. That's true. This is your symmetric property. When you compare two things, like if I am as tall as Bob, is Bob as tall as me? That's the symmetric property. So these properties, reflexive, symmetric, and transitive, that we've gone over already, they're stated here as theorems. Theorems are statements that must be justified using logical reasoning. They're true. We're not going to accept them as facts like postulates. We would have to prove that these are true. But these appear as theorems. So they tell you that congruence of segments is reflexive, meaning if you have segment AB, it's definitely congruent to segment AB. The symmetric property tells you if you have two segments, segment AB congruent to segment CD, then you know that segment CD is also congruent to segment AB. You're just reversing them. We had one quantity here. We had two quantities here. Transitive property uses three quantities. If I'm the same height as Bob, and Bob is the same height as Charlie, then I am the same height as Charlie as well. That's three quantities. Reflexive, symmetric, transitive. RST 1, 2, 3. Good way to remember it.